Hard hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Yeah. Off-season intro, let's go.
There we go.
It's July. We're not in the dog days yet, John. But today, oh my God, it is hot in Boston, folks. Dog days are coming.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Dog days.
a few more weeks. We got Summer League, baby.
We got Summer League. Yeah. We got Summer League. But this
God.
like,
I got to tell you, I'm already worried watching how excitedly Bobby is tweeting about like the prospect of Summer League and
name me one important Summer League in Celtics history.
It was a good one a couple of years
I'm
ago with
struggling.
Neesmith and Pritchard.
Was it the fourth one that Yabu went to?
Yeah, it's been a while now. But that first one, that was the first one I went to. It was Joe, Neesmith.
It's important for you to go.
That's
It's
where
important for
Kevin
you.
Gelly made the team.
Oh yeah, Kevin Jelly.
Bobby, Bobby, you on this? What's Vegas, Bobby? Like, you get your bags packed, you get your outfits picked
Yeah,
out.
so there'll be a bucket hat for sure. Look at the weather right
course.
now. It's probably going to be like 110 per usual.
Damn.
Bathing suit and
Bathing suit.
I'm not staying on the strip. I'm staying close to the arena. So I think I'll be on my best behavior.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
We'll see about that.
what are we doing here? We're talking about the Celtics.
Shooting the shit.
Brad Stevens addressed the media today. And we're gonna go over and play through some of his comments, read into whatever we can read into. And
We got here Jimmy
hoping-
too. You haven't been here since everything went down, have you? Everyone leaving, everyone getting traded.
I haven't missed a show.
Okay, so you've reacted to some of the big stuff.
What you've said has been very memorable, obviously, for Bobby. So that's great. Here
It was John,
he's-
Bobby. I think it was John who missed
John,
the show, actually.
John was missing. Okay.
Well, what did I
John's the
miss?
one who's got hot takes up the you know what to throw out there. I'm sure.
We need to hear your thoughts on Luke leaving.
I'll
Yeah,
give
you
you
weren't here
all
for
my
the Luke
thoughts
show.
on. I'll give you my thoughts on everything. But first off, we need to tell everybody, and I got to tell you, my studio is a little bit all over the place right now, and I can't find stuff. But I will tell you right now, I found it.
Somebody messed up your
Episode is brought to you as always by Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. Download that Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS. Get 50 instantly when you play 5. That is code CLNS. Prize Picks, $5. Get 50. Run your game. And of course, this podcast is part of the CLNS Media Network, which you well know. Please like and subscribe
Yeah, it is.
and do all that good stuff. Follow us, rate, review, check out the audio feed. If you missed the video, you can always run it back with the audio the next morning, which I know a lot of people do if they can't catch us. We are live after every game, and there it is. You see that little icon there. Ding, 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 ding. Subscribe. Turn on your notifications. You will know every time we go live, especially weird times like this when there's nothing really going on and we're just popping up to say hello. And that's what we are doing today to discuss Brad Stevens, right? And here it is. Brad Stevens spoke on the future of the Celtics. So, Jimmy, I know you and I, we've kind of been in one place. Other people have kind of been on another. And I think slowly, I just think no.
Maybe
Look,
about
slowly, a lot of people, not just on this show, a lot of people have been slow to grasp what's happening here. And I feel like finally, maybe Brad, as close to saying we're not trying to win next year, basically said it. He said the reasoning for everything, and he kind of sort of said, we've got what we've got. We're here to play. So I'm hoping after today, we stop asking questions like, what are they going to do at center? And, and what they're going to do is they're going to go out there and they're going to compete with what they have, hope for the best, and accept whatever happens. And if that happens to be losses, that's actually better. And if it's wins, again, as we said, great. That means some guys played above expectation. They punched above their weight class, or, you got more out of people than you were expecting. And that could include Keita, that could include Pritchard, that could include Shireman, that could include Walsh. And then that's a bonus because you've got better players in the fold than you thought you had. So this is what they're doing this year. And we have to be prepared for it. But finally, Brad did openly address, and I believe, Bobby, this was your question, why the things that happened had to happen, why Luke had to leave, why Al is likely to leave, why they had to trade Kristaps, why they had to trade Holiday, why they're not able to go out there and sign any impact guys. And Brad kind of finally spilled the beans.
I mean, the second apron's why those trades happen. I think that those are pretty obvious. And the basketball penalties associated with those are real. We've all talked about that. And but we were fortunate because we liked the guys we got back, and I think that that's one of the things that we are excited about. But those are not easy trades to make. Those are not easy phone calls. Obviously, those guys have been around the league a long time. They knew the CBA. They knew that was a high likelihood that they could be part of a move, and they were communicated that before. But it's still hard when you are. But again. We will miss them, and we're thankful for them.
And that's it.
Yeah.
The penalties.
Okay.
Well, they're still above the second apron right now, so obviously they're not that scared of them. Now they'll get below it. But it was an interesting day on the strategic money front. We'll hear about the tax stuff later, which I've said going back since they pretty much created these rules is the real issue here. But Stevens made it sound like that's less of a concern than the second apron penalties that they avoided here. So we'll be debating that forever. The significance of that versus the payroll and how much this ownership group's willing to spend. We're still going to find that out here in the near future. But my big takeaway from today is that they seem satisfied where they're at. Maybe not that they'd prefer to be in this position, but this is pretty much, as you said, John, where they're at, and they're just going to roll with it. And it doesn't seem like significant changes will happen here. Maybe they'll waive JD and get below that second apron line with a move like that. But I don't foresee a major move for center. I know Noah and I were talking about that earlier. She still thinks that's possible. I don't see them being able to move a Simons and Yang because they've had a month to do it now effectively, and it hasn't happened. So you got your tweets yesterday. Welcome in Simons. Welcome in Yang. We love these guys. And I'm sure they tried like crazy to move on from those guys and maybe fill some needs or, bring back some cheaper salaries. But it's hard to move salary right now. We're seeing it around the league. Teams are moving first round picks. Teams are paying and incentivizing the other side to take on salary. Saw it with the Nets and Michael Porter Jr. and a few other moves here. So if the Celtics want to further reduce their payroll or find some players at positions of needs, they're probably going to have to pay for it. And we'll see if they decide that they want to do that. But for right now, it looks like this is their 15 or 14 if they end up cutting one guy.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
go ahead, Jimmy.
If that's the case, then I mean, this is as we were kind of saying in previous shows, it's a fringe playoff team, And
they're over under, Jimmy. They came out the other day, 43.
So if you're John Zannis right now, you want to jump off a cliff.
I gotta go, guys.
Yeah,
I gotta go. I gotta.
The last place you want to be in the NBA is 500, and this is a 500 basketball team. Based on what Vegas thinks, I think based on what a lot of people are finally maybe starting to realize. I don't know if they are done, Bobby. I can still see a situation with Hauser being offloaded or traded somewhere. I can still see Simons going if at some point, maybe not in the off season, but at some point, Niang is not, I think Niang is a funny guy. I don't know if he's got much of a future here in Boston. I'm not really sure.
That's quite a way to describe him.
Yeah, I think he'll be a character. But with this roster, and you have to also, we don't know where Jaylen Brown's going to be yet in his recovery. I think I don't think you can assume that he's going to go 82 games, certainly.
Brad said today he'll be ready soon, as in soon, now, this month.
He'll be ready, but how's he going to look? Is he going to be the same type of player? Is he going to be as physical? Is he going to be as confident? Is he going to take on a different, what's his role going to be? How is that going to
Let's
change?
do that math. Time out. When did he have the surgery?
He had the surgery on, let's see the date, probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, June 11th.
Okay, super interesting. And he'll be ready this month. So if he'd had the surgery during the year and took 6-7 weeks off, he would have been fine for the playoffs.
Potentially.
Okay, interesting.
I don't know. That seems to be
Very
that
interesting.
could be grasping a little bit there.
Just curious. I'm just saying hypothetically. Interesting. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Look, and Brad followed up. I will say this. Brad gave some clarity on they keep hammering the penalties because the last thing the GM's going to do and flat out say the owners are cheap. He was asked a follow up as well. Is getting out of that whole repeater tax issue. Does that count as a basketball penalty? And he said, yeah, look, there's a benefit to that, but it's not the priority. The priority is retaining first round picks and X, Y, and Z. So they're really, kind of stuck on the apron penalties, we want our picks. That's the path to rebuilding. And he's not wrong. It's just, again, if they were a championship contender and the owners were content paying tax, retaining your first round picks or keeping them from being frozen at the end of the round wouldn't matter to you. You would just keep paying because you would be fine with it because your team would be awesome. If the tax was only 20 or 30 or 40 million, it's just that the tax was $280 million. That's bad. So look, the books were messy. They took advantage of it. And that's what happened here. What continues to surprise me throughout all of this is Brad is saying words now, Bobby, like obviously, and we went for it and we knew this was happening, win or lose. We knew this was happening, Tatum injury or no injury. So what's really funny is they flat out had conversations behind the scenes. Guys, let's go for broke and win it right now. We can make these moves during this 2-year window. Then we're going to be in freaking hell for a little while.
And they had the cover today, right? They could have said, oh, it's because Tatum went down, but they didn't.
They didn't. And Brad flat out said, so it's worth it. It was worth it. We made the move and we're doing it.
They won.
And they won. But people, again, sitting at home are still like, for 2 years are like, if they win, maybe they won't break it up. Or, maybe they'll find a way. Or Brad's going to work something out. Like, this has been so clearly coming for so long. The conversations we've been having, I've been more not talking about the inevitability of the moves, but more how surprised people were that they were inevitably coming. It's really been a bizarre offseason in terms of the level of surprise and goalpost moving from some people. Like it was a victory to not have to give draft picks away and blow up your roster. Where a couple of months ago, people were still hopeful that they'd be able to retain at least one of Al or Luke, not have to give up both Porzingis and Holiday. Now, man, I mean, it's gutted. They gutted it. You've lost 5 of your top 9 players. So it's pretty significant. And we're lucky it wasn't more. A lot of people thought Hauser was gone too. So, yeah, I mean, this was significant. And if anybody believes I'd like to see the over-under on how many games Simons and Yang play in the Celtics, because I would put it at 0.5 and I would take the under.
I know. You didn't hear anything about those guys until they finally had to announce it yesterday and say some nice things about them, man. I'm intrigued by not Niang, Simons. I want to see him play.
I like him. I like him.
Yeah, we both agreed on that, John. And I haven't understood the excitement about moving, maybe because it's making $28 million. That's probably the big reason, is that that's not a guy you want to ideally pay that much, especially with tax. So if they can find a good opportunity to shave that down a little bit or move Niang into an exception or something, that won't be stunning if it ends up happening, Jimmy. But when I said this is going to be the roster this year and Brad insinuated that, it's because this is more or less what you're working with. Maybe a guy goes, maybe they waive a guy, maybe they trade one guy for another who's making a little bit less money. But this is going to be the roster, and I spelled it out earlier, and it's really stunning to write it down and put it on paper. But you're talking about a starting lineup that's going to be White, Pritchard, Hauser, Brown, and Cater.
Brown, yeah.
And then a bench that's
43 wins there. 43 wins with that.
Simons, Niang, and Luka Garza. maybe Hugo Gonzalez breaks through a little bit and plays. I mean, the fact that that's even a conversation now that some of these summer league guys could play minutes for you is a huge departure from years past, Jimmy. Because like your comments at the top of the show, you could just use summer league as, oh, this is fun. Some guys who may be playing a couple years, and we're just getting some first impressions of these guys. Now, some of the conversation today at practice was like, can some of these guys actually play for you this year? And that's where they're at. And it's startling. Like and we'll get to the Horford stuff in a minute here. When you add Horford in with the guys they've already lost, it's a startling amount of talent that went out the door this offseason, along with Tatum, who's obviously probably not going to play this year.
Let me ask you this, just looking at the starting lineup here, because I was trying to find a comparison for the 43. And again, the league is different. The East is different. It's not as challenging. Yeah. I mean, it's the bottom of the East is so poor, but I keep pointing to like the Washington, like the Wizards teams with Beal and Kristaps and Kuzma, like that won 30 something games. Like that to me is kind of closer to what this team is. Some pretty good top level talent, but not outstanding. And very, 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 very little behind it. I'm still confused by the 43 wins. I don't know how you get there. I don't know how you get there with this team, with that bench, and with so many holes.
You have
already.
to be healthy.
But it's not even the health. You're bumping Hauser from a 20-minute per game bench role corner shooter out there playing with 3 all-stars who will take all of the gravity and all of the attention, off of them, and asking him to start theoretically. You're taking Pritchard, who's playing half of his minutes against second unit as a spark plug, again, with 2 and 3 all-star caliber players on the floor with him at the same time, and Jason Tatum almost always on the floor with him, and just saying, go ahead and be better next year. You're taking Keita, who fell out of your friggin' rotation as a 4th center, and starting him. Like, I'm baffled at the thought of, like,
he's your first center.
Like, I want to be surprised because I like Keita, I like Hauser, I like Pritchard. I really do want to be pleasantly surprised watching Keita play 25 minutes a game, 30, and being like, all right, we're seeing it. I like it. Give him the opportunity. Yeah, there's some bad, but there's some good here too. I can't believe we think that this lineup is going to be 43 plus wins. Especially with the bench, you're going to play guys significant minutes that were completely out of your rotation last year, completely out. Keita, right. Shireman, Walsh. I mean, that's what those bottom 5 lottery teams do. You're watching guys play minutes. This is when you see Banton putting up 25 a game and you're like, did we do something wrong? And the reality is no, that's just the best that they have there. And Banton's putting up 20 something games, but it's an awful team. Like that's got, it's late stages Portland before they traded Lillard, I'm confused, man. I'm confused. And
I
didn't mention Tillman and Brad did. Yeah. So I'd love to see it. It would be phenomenal if Shireman all of a sudden is pouring in 12, 13 points a game and looks like legitimately good. If you're getting any quality minutes out of Hugo as a 19-year-old Hugo, are we going with Hugo or Hugo?
Hugo, he said.
Hugo. Okay. Hugo.
Yeah,
I would love to see it. I would love to see it. I'm just kidding. I don't see it.
That's the beauty of this year is you'll get to see the young guys finally. We've been screaming for it. Joe's been hesitant to do it, and now he needs to do it. You got to see what you have in these guys, and some of them will sink, some of them will swim, and they'll just have to roll with that. And I'm sure there'll be some injuries and some opportunities for guys to break through, but that's where the swing factor I think is going to be, John, because I do see some competitiveness in this roster, especially with the top end talent that you mentioned there. The center thing's a big problem because you're just completely uncertain at maybe the most important position that's still left in the game. To get where there's a position left in it. So I'm stuck in the middle. I do see this team being better than some of the bottom feeders in the East here, but it is becoming more and more difficult to see the kind of consistency and room for error that they would have to reach 43 wins. I am a little bit under on that if I had a guess here. Now, I don't see them in the mid 30s, low 30s, but they're going to have to be super healthy and consistent and have people break through to get to that level. And, you know, when you're ranking the East teams based on those over-unders, that's a tie with Philadelphia for 7th. So that's what we've talked about, Jimmy, right? Like play-in territory. I don't think they're below the 10 seed out of the play-in mix there. So you're either playing your way into the playoffs or losing, and you're in that like Dallas Mavericks range of the lottery last year where you have like 1 to 3% chance at the number 1 pick.
Yeah. Let's throw a
I'm
couple
with John.
more.
I don't see where these
Go ahead,
wins
Jimmy.
are
Go
coming in
ahead.
from. And no, I think I'm a little delayed, so I might log off and log back in. But before that, I was just gonna say, I'm kind of with you. I don't see where a lot of these wins are coming from. And we haven't even talked about the fact that you can't afford to have guys sit. Like last year, you could win games without Brown because you had Tatum. Like you could win games without Tatum because you had Brown. You had Holiday. You had Porzingis when he was out there. You just don't have that luxury anymore. So you, as you know, John mentioned, like look down the roster. You know, if you're sitting if Jaylen Brown is sitting on the bench and he looks down, he's not going to like what he sees. I think for the most part, you know, if looking for guys that are going to come in for him, and so I do feel like there is going to be that issue. And the other concern is the players that are legitimate NBA players, the Browns, you know, White, Pritchard. I don't doubt their effort, and I don't doubt their wanting to compete at all times. But at some point, if the season does start off poorly, you got to wonder, or they're going to wonder, what are we playing for this year? Like, why am I going out there? If I'm Jaylen Brown, why am I going out there and putting my body on the line and, you know, putting in 40 minutes and losing by 20? And so at some point, you got to wonder if it really does get bad, are they going to throw in the towel early? Are we going to see Simons get traded? Well, regardless, but would the Celtics be even more sellers leading up to the trade deadline? Because at that point, they're going to be asset piling if they can. And Brad Stevens even mentioned it today. None of the moves we make are going to be better than getting Jason Tatum out of a boot. So they've been, you know, positioning. That's been their motto for the year, is that they're only waiting for Jason Tatum to come back to play. I mean, Brad Stevens has said that multiple times. Feels like that's, you know, put that on a T-shirt. Is like, we're just waiting for Tatum's return.
Our,
you know, and like,
our
that's
best
kind of
player
like the
is
motto. So they don't seem to have a whole lot of hope in this year either.
All right,
No,
Jimmy,
they haven't tried to
log off
hide
and
it
back
either.
on. Jimmy, log off and back on. See if we can fix the delay. Yeah, our best player is in a boot. Make the T-shirt. Send that off to Joe while you're doing your thing. And
Best
we'll play a
players in
couple more.
boot. He was moving
best
wicked fast in the boot today, though. John, Brad said.
Yeah,
he was flying around in the boot.
Anyway, here's Brad on the tax that we were talking about. A question as well.
And I think there's value in those things, obviously, and you weigh those values, and the people at the top have to ultimately make those decisions. But it's been pretty clear, and Bill has been pretty clear from the get-go that he wants to make sure that we're prioritizing basketball assets and the ability to retool this thing at the highest level that we can. And, you know, again, the most important, you know, acquisition that we're going to be able to make in the next couple of years is getting Tatum out of a boot. Right, like we're not beating that one, so that's going to be the best thing that can happen for us. But you know, everything else we want to, you know, we have most of our first round picks still, other than the 29 one. We have a lot of seconds now, so we have some flexibility there, and we want to just we don't want to.
We'll get into that.
Away our chance to use those to become the best that we can be over the next few years, just to make a move to help save money. And I think that that's been very clearly stated to me. And you know, I think that that's, you know, we'll continue to look at how we can make things a little bit better or tweak things around the edges, and maybe something comes up in the next couple of weeks. But, you know, that's been our mindset.
So translation here, it's not a fire sale just to save money, not completely, not yet. And, you know, we're loading up for when Tatum returns. That's been the general motto here. It's the first time I recall Brad saying anything about a directive from Bill. You know, the new Celtics owner, Bill Chisholm. Someone had asked who the hell is Bill. So he did say that Bill's kind of told him, let's hold on to our first round picks here. So let's be careful and make sure that we have that because we want to rebuild. It doesn't sound like something an owner would necessarily say. I just think that that's good business.
Yeah,
and again, I
it's
do
maintaining the tax bill they have right now without the
Yeah.
directive to say, get off that, even if you got to move picks to do it. Because obviously that's what they'd have to do to move off of Simons, to move off of
right.
Niang, I think,
So
at this
right.
point.
And again, I'm going to come back to it and I want Jimmy's take on it as well. Because this stuff is shaping up to is a little bit more interesting than I thought. Just in terms of a couple things that have transpired since the July 6th league year kicked in and different things that we found out about that trade and the situation that they're in right now with those trades. But again, we'll wait in for Jimmy here. So again, Brad is, there was definitely a level of honesty in this press conference here. Just in terms of we knew we had to do it. He flat out said he spoke to both KP and Holiday and told them there's a chance you're gone. There's a chance you stay, but the likelihood is it's not great, and prepared them for this eventuality this offseason. So they knew what they were doing. They knew who they were doing it to and with, and they did it. I think they wanted to do more, Bobby, and I think that's what's kind of interesting here is I do wonder at this point, and again, let me see if I can find this before we get into it. Let me see here. Brad did say, well, what we did find out is that basically Brad, Jimmy, you good?
I'm here.
Hi, buddy.
Welcome in.
Hey, let's try this again. Did I make any? Could you guys even was I so far behind that nothing I said even made sense to the conversation?
No, we got you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What did I miss while I was gone?
Well, what I wanted to get into is here that Brad's talking about tweaking and other things around the edges, and it's clear that they weren't going to just dump Jaylen Brown or Derek White for money purposes only. Might they have traded them in a basketball trade for more assets? It's possible, and maybe that didn't come around. I don't think they're done there. I do think people have to be careful parsing through some of Brad's words. When Brad says the owners aren't going to like force him to sell stuff and that they will allow him to spend, it means you don't have to trade just for the sake of money, and you can spend if and when the team is good enough to spend. It just isn't now. And again, I do have to put this out here. This is where you get the Tatum cover, and this is why the Tatum in a boot is put out there so much, right? The Tatum in a boot is put out there to make it clear that because we don't have this, it's not prudent to be making moves to be trying to make ourselves better right now, because what we need first is that guy to come back. Then we can talk about what else we can do to be good. We can't be good until he gets here. So just leave us alone. It's going to be bad this year. Let's let it kind of go there. Now, what we were talking about is, Jimmy, they did want to shed some payroll, and they did want to have hopefully the flexibility to potentially sign Al Horford or Luke Cornett. And I'm telling you right now that I believe they were never going to go to that money, but I believe whatever Al's going to get, the Celtics want to pay it, but they can't pay it because they miscalculated a little bit on how difficult it would be to trade Niang and Anthony Simons, who I think they thought would be gone by now, and they can't do that, and they can't go lower, underneath the tax to have that flexibility to be able to do those things because they can't.
Think Al was
trade them.
waiting for that?
I believe Al might have been waiting around. That's my speculation warning, that I believe that it's taken this long because Al, they were hoping to shake loose some change here. And that's why Brad said I've been told we got to prioritize our picks, meaning I could trade these guys, but I don't want to attach picks to do it. But I do wonder whether we need to start talking about if there's just a bit of a miscalculation, because among the things that we learned this past week was that Celtics didn't get those 2 picks in the Holiday trade. It was player for player. And so they just took on a $30 million, $28 million salary and saved $6-7 million, but didn't get those other future assets that everybody was celebrating. So now you've got this player, Simons, who maybe they thought they could flip for lesser players that they could either buy out or trade again and keep trading down and take that money off the books. And they're not able to. And they're not able to flip Niang either without attaching a pick or two to that. Now they don't have these 2 second-round picks to do it. They're much more hamstrung in getting off of these deals. They may be stuck waiting for them to expire at the end of the year to get the cash back, but you're not going to get assets in return because they don't want to send assets out just to save the money. So this is what I believe is happening here. They're in a weird spot because they didn't get the return on Holiday, and they might have miscalculated how quickly they could flip these guys, and they can't without attaching picks to them. And now they're stuck with them.
I said it when they first got Simons, and again, John, you and I like this player, but the fact that the Blazers had him for all of these years and couldn't move off him even during a rebuild for some significant return, I thought said a lot about what his value was around the league. And as the offseason progressed here, guard's such a loaded position around the league. It's the opposite of center, where every team has a guard that they feel good about, and the teams that didn't start filling those positions. I thought about Dallas. They go and get D'Angelo Russell. Milwaukee brought back Trent. There were a bunch of guys who play the Simons role on other teams that make it so those rivals don't need a $28 million
that they don't make 28 on an expiring. Yeah. And it's less about, it's the money now in a year that as this new CBA kicks in, it's a money now when everybody's trying to pair cost and the asset that you're going to lose at the end of the year, because you don't want to, people don't want to re-sign him either.
Yeah.
They want the option to maybe sign him for a mid-level or something next year, but that's about it. So without
that's
any
the
guarantee
difficult part about this is he's a larger contract, I'd say. Even, these $28 million things, they get a little bit of a smaller percentage of the cap each year, so the numbers look bigger than they end up being. But I still think your medium-sized salaries are like 10, 15, maybe 20 million at this point under this current cap. So he's a little bigger than that. You want to, and I think the plan going into the season was, like you said, John, subtract 7 off Drew, then maybe you bring back 2 guys who are making 10, and you just shave down the salary that way, and maybe you actually get some players that end up being valuable down the line through that process, and they got stuck at the first stop here with Simon. So maybe you can still do that down the line, but the biggest frustration, or one of the bigger frustrations I have with them not retaining Luke here, is that's a good medium-sized contract to have. And maybe you couldn't do the same structure San Antonio ended up doing, which is 4 times 10 with 2 non-guaranteed years at the end. I've mentioned the 5-year minimum that gets you up to like 20. With that, I know B-Rob report, there might have been like a no trade clause included in that too. So maybe that made it less appealing for Boston. But you lost a lot of the ability to have medium-sized contracts here to make moves down the line. And that's my question now, as all this talent goes out the door and you have 2 expirings in Simons and Niang, is what are those contracts going to be next summer that allow you to make trades to bring in talent? You don't want to move White, Brown, Pritchard, guys like that, Hauser even. But those are the only guys that are on contracts aside from Brown and are valuable enough that you can actually return value for them. Simons is not that, and his contract will be off the books. Niang's not that. None of your lower salary players, including your rookies, would bring back much at this point. So even though you have more flexibility per se under the second apron next summer, and maybe with the tax, you don't have the flexibility to make trades right now. You can move your first. Do you want to do that with where you're at? The seconds don't get you back a ton.
You can't do anything.
So they don't have tradable salaries right now, and they let one potentially.
They don't have tradable salaries. They don't have tradable assets. They don't have high draft picks, not yet. And when they do, they better hold on to it because they need that badly. They don't have tradable play. The most tradable salaries are Pritchard and Hauser, but you need those guys because they're cheaper.
So this is what we said, John. And they're back to 2021.
Yeah.
It's Tatum, Brown, maybe a few more higher level supporting cast members. And you're hoping you can develop some rookie younger guys. And that's going to start this year. And we'll see if Joe's capable of it. And that's a challenge he hasn't had to face yet as a head coach. And it's make or break now, Jimmy. These young guys and their development and the ones they get next summer in that draft are going to decide whether or not they can keep this Brown Tatum core together.
But you also have
Jimmy.
Your rookie is 19. He's 19 years old. He didn't play college ball. I don't know if they drafted him thinking that they were going to get somebody that's going to contribute right away. I do obviously think that they like him, but again, he's going to get a little bit of an opportunity here. But Celtics historically don't give their young guys much of an opportunity. This is going to be an outlier season, definitely. I do wish, Bobby, that some of this younger talent was a little bit more promising. I do like Shireman. I think he's shown flashes, but after that, I think you kind of know what you have with a lot of these younger guys for the most part. Sure, you give them more minutes, their numbers are going to creep up a little bit. But are they going to make a significant jump into a real rotational player? And if they even did this season, how does that change next season when the expectations change? When you have Tatum, hopefully, back playing regular minutes and or close to it, and fans are sick and tired of what's most likely going to be a down year. They're going to want to see change immediately. They put up with they in Brad we trusted as much as they could in this offseason, but they're going to want to see serious progress moving forward next season. If Brad's going to keep pushing, the best move we can make is getting Tatum out of a boot. Well, once he's out of the boot, then what's the next best move? Because it's not going to be continuing to shed salary and using the second apron as an excuse. It's going to say, okay, here's what we have. Here's where we need to be. How do we get there? And to your point, Bobby, they don't have a lot of tradable players or tradable assets. What would they do with Simons? Would that be a player that they would extend similar to Holiday just because they have him and they don't want to lose him for nothing if they can't trade him?
It's an interesting question, Jimmy, because the value you would think is that, you could take 30 more million off the books. All of a sudden you're under the tax and then maybe a year from now, you might look to, doing
Find
more
a team like the Celtics.
with what you have, but not having those salaries, those tradable salaries really hurts you, because once you get out of those second apron penalties, or once you get out of the penalties and the repeater situation, and you can aggregate salaries in a trade, you don't have salaries to aggregate anymore unless you're trading Jaylen Brown or Derek White. So you've got a problem there. They built a roster where they're going to be paying three guys and nobody else. Mm-hmm. And Bobby, before you jump in here, I do want to point out, you mentioned the 2021 Celtics and that there's similarities here, but that this team might have more pieces. I'm gonna counter with this. That 2021 team had Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as their top two players. I would say that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are better than Jaylen Brown and Derek White. So that team was better at the top. Yep. Then their supporting cast was Marcus Smart, Kemba Walker on a limited role, missing some games, but still scoring 20 points a game. Evan Fournier, Tristan Thompson, Daniel Tice, and the rise of Robert Williams. I would say unequivocally, without much debate, that team was considerably better than this year's roster. Considerably better.
And that
team finished 36 and 36 as the 7th seed in the East. So that team considerably better than this year's team on paper. Considerably better.
You actually had centers, which I can't fathom where they're at the center position. It's truly unbelievable. And you would have thought they'd have a plan to retain at least one of the reliable guys long term. Because again, I know you keep saying it, John, it doesn't matter who's at center this year, but there's no magic solution to center the following year when you want to start winning again and want to get back on your feet. So I wish they figured out the Cornet situation. Obviously, we can debate the Horford one here. The fact that you have none of the three, we said three centers all last year and all three are gone here. And now it's Luka Garza who flowed between the NBA and the G League, and Josh Minot, who's never really played the position, and Tillman, who hasn't been seen since November. It's unreal. And it is hard to say that they didn't miscalculate that free agency class for both of those guys and the value that'd be out there and their own ability to be able to retain them. And I know Brad said today that they made both of them offers. I don't know how competitive those were, because it looked like Cornet walked out the door pretty quickly and assertively. And Horford, even though he hasn't signed yet, feels like he decided pretty while ago where he was going to end up.
I think it's pretty clear that those offers were teeny, and they said, guys, we'd love to have you. We got a couple mil. if you want to come back for that, that's great. But we totally get if you're going to go. And Luke's like, yeah, this is the one chance in my life to go get paid. I'm going to go get paid. Of course, he's going to take that, and it's understandable. We're going to hear a little bit more from Brad as well. But first,
It's heartbreaking seeing him in that jersey, Jimmy.
And being funny.
And the new Twin Towers.
Being funny and lovable right away.
And wait until he's good.
Great,
wait until he's
Luke
good
quotes
out there.
Anyway, once again, we want to remind all of you folks at home, if you're interested in getting in on the action here, you got to check out Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app in all of North America. Best way to put your actual sports opinions to use and make real cash. Pick more or less on at least 2 players, a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Are you kidding me? You can get in on the action here. You've got women's basketball going on right now. You've got professional baseball, of course, and I know people want to be locked and loaded and ready to play when football season rolls around, because that's a ton of fun. So sign up today. Use that code CLNS. You get 50 instantly in your account when you play 5. You don't have to win to receive the bonus. It's 50 guaranteed. In addition to that special offer, there's a bunch of free offers like Taco Tuesday, where Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25%, provide even more value for your lineups. There's free squares being given out all the time, like a certain player to score 0.5, more than 0.5 points. It's basically a freebie. You can insert it into your lineup, makes it that much easier to win money. So once again, download the app today. Use code CLNS. Get 50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, code CLNS 50 instantly after you play that $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Go ahead and run your game, ladies and gentlemen. Run it. Back to what we were talking about here. We did talk about, I thought this was perhaps the funniest quote of the sorry, I got the wrong the funniest quote of the Brad Stevens one, when he was talking about, and again, Jimmy, we did talk about, I can't figure this out. Oh yeah. We talked about, like, for a while, right? Couple weeks. What are they going to do here at the center position? They're not just going to leave it. Like, they got to do something. There has to be a plan, right? And there wasn't. And Brad today talked about kind of, like,
we're going to find out.
And so this was Brad's quote when asked about, like, so how do you feel about, like, what you got going on at the center, with the big man entering this season?
Then the big man rotation is the one that was the most hampered this summer with the offseason moves. What are your thoughts on the guys that you currently have on the roster and, like, their ability to be kind of holding down the forward in the front court?
We're going to find out, right? I think, I think we had an incredible luxury with Luke and Nimi as our 3rd and 4th centers, because I think they were both much better than that. And I think Luke will have an amazing impact in San Antonio, and I think Nimi has a great chance to be impactful here. We've always liked Luka Garza from afar, and we think that he has, the real physicality that's necessary on both ends of the floor, especially on the glass, in addition to his ability to score. And then, you got Amari, who's down there now, and we think that he has a high upside. And then you can flex other guys into that center role. Tillman is more of a 4 probably, but he can flex into that center role. And so we'll have to do that by committee. That group will not be the group that people will single out based on paper on what they've done with their careers thus far as our strongest position. But it's up to them to prove it otherwise.
I love it.
It's up to you guys.
Translation.
You give me yours.
We effed ourselves.
Translation. They suck, but maybe they show you something different. Like, we know it's bad. It's bad. They probably know it. The American people know it's bad. We'll see what happens.
We are talking
here.
about Nemesh Keita, Xavier Tillman,
Brad could
Amari
even stay
Williams
with a straight face.
I mean, in the athletic draft guide, I think Amari Williams was like 75th or something. And then Josh Minot. Are either of you familiar?
No, I honestly, until
Luka
you said his
Garza.
name, I thought it was pronounced Minot, or Minot. So you're calling him Minot. I'll go with that.
They got the
No
two
idea.
worst
looked it
guys
up.
on the Timberwolves. Call it
Yeah.
what it is. They got the two worst guys. In the
I like
Timberwolves.
Garza.
I watched a good amount of Timberwolves games, like just on national TV in the playoffs or whatever. I didn't even know those guys were on the team. So that should explain to you how big those signings were.
I'm excited for Kata though, and the big thing, John, like you said earlier, I think Jimmy might have said it.
Come on.
Stop. You're excited for Kata?
Do we really think that
Bobby,
Kata's
we
listen?
spent
I've
You guys
also-
wanted to see Kata at one point play over Luke. Come on.
Stop. I just want to be clear. I lobbied for Rob Williams, and you would point out everything he doesn't do well, and you wanted Tristan Thompson. We've talked about different things along the way of why a guy can't play. You've been telling us that Kata can't be on the floor for X, Y, and Z, but now you're excited. You can't be excited. Like, this is terrifying, and I like the guy. I wanted him to
My
get
stance last year.
I wanted him to get third center meetings. I want
Yep.
third center minutes, not starting center minutes. Like, there's a big difference.
My stance last year was I would accept some hit to Luke's minutes to see Kata play consistently, and for some reason or another, his minutes disappeared down the stretch. And I think that's a point one you guys made earlier. Is some of these guys were here last year and did not play, and now they're part of the plan. Doesn't add up a ton, and
Terrifying.
we haven't heard a ton from Joe on this front. I can't wait to hear that and what he's thinking about this situation and how he's going to make it all work. And I'm sure his expectation is going to be to just make the best of it and try to win. But again, these are some guys that he buried rotation wise and didn't like how they spaced the floor or where they positioned themselves defensively or whatever reasons he had for why they didn't play into the playoffs down the stretch. Shireman too, you can throw him into that camp. He didn't receive a playoff minute. So these are guys that are going to have to play big roles now for you and under Mazzulla and all that. And we got some clarification on the Joe thing today too, Brad. did
Well,
say
I'm
he
going to
signed
play that for you.
multiple-
I'm going to play
Yeah.
it for you. So that's the other thing is another Bobby question here. Joe Mazzulla, we were under the impression Joe's in a contract year, and Brad said kind of under his breath that he's here for more, but I couldn't make out the word. He has, but Bobby had kind of asked for clarification on it here. So here's talking about Joe.
I want to clarify something you said last time. You said Joe has multiple years left on his contract.
That's right.
And how big of a priority is possibly coming to an extension with him, coming to something long-term this summer?
We'd love to have Joe here for a long time.
That's it. A non-answer, but a non-answer in terms of an extension, but confirmation that we weren't entirely clear that he is here for more years than just this one.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of it, but this is going to be an important year for him because let's say he does have a year left after this season, and maybe that's an option. I know Michael Hawley said, I think that he has a team option of sorts for the second year, which makes sense that wouldn't be considered part of the extension when Shams reported it. So effectively, he might have another year under contract if they want him here, Jimmy, but he's only guaranteed one more year if that's the case. So I don't think he's coaching for his job this year necessarily, but I do think.
But he could coach himself out of a job.
He's going to be on the same page as the organization. I think they obviously have some plans and priorities for this season, whether it's development or taking a step back here and maybe managing some guys injury wise, whatever their prerogative might be for this season as an organization. He's going to have to follow through on that.
What do you think it is? Jimmy, what do you think it is? What is the prerogative? Like, what if it's going to be filtered down, the honest conversation had behind the scenes, not what they're able to tell us, is ownership telling Brad and Brad telling Joe, we want to focus on player development as much as possible. And I don't want to play Brown and White and those guys 42 minutes a game just so we can get an extra win or two. Just play the guys, play the younger guys, and whatever happens. You're safe. You're not going to get whacked on a one loss record here. Do it. Or is he just going to say, Joe, go out there and try to win with these guys, and then let Joe go bananas, not play Shireman because he doesn't like rookies, not play anybody, and and do what he's got. Like, what do you think? Do you think there's been a message conveyed to Joe? This is how we want you to coach it.
Yeah. And again, sorry, I think I'm on a little delay, but I think they're going to tell Joe how to coach and then criticize him when they lose games. What are you guys laughing at?
We'll tell you in 6 seconds when the delay kicks in.
Okay. Well, I got to talk to Ahmed about the delay right now. But what I will say is that they can't tell Joe one thing and then fire him at the end of the year for putting him in a position to lose games. So I don't think I do that allow Joe to put that he wants to have guys in there that can help them win games. I just think the talent's not going to be there. So when Brad says we want Joe to be here for a long time, I almost think that's a little bit of a cop-out answer, because of course you want him to be here for a long time. That means he's doing well and the team's doing well and you're winning games and everyone's being successful. But this is the NBA, and there are much better coaches than Joe that have been fired over the last year. So it's a what have you done for me lately league. And so, yeah, I'm sure Brad does want Joe to be here for a long time. I'm sure anybody would, because that would insinuate success. If it turns out they're not successful and there's a number of reasons why, maybe part of it is talent, but maybe the other part of it is coaching, then he won't be here for a long time. Brad didn't lie. He did want Joe to be here for a long time. It just didn't work out. And so now Joe's not here anymore. So I don't really put much stock into Brad's answers. We see coaches come and go in the NBA all the time. I mean, you just go look at the last couple of months of the NBA, and we've seen, very successful coaches get axed, and they've been just as shocking each time for some reason. So if Joe Mazzulla has a bad year next season and he gets fired, I don't think it should be that shocking. It's the way the NBA goes in today's day and age. Now, I do think it would be a little bit unfair. He kind of was put in a tough position. He lost his best player. Then a number of other of his starting players were traded away. It will be interesting to see how he can help some of these younger guys improve and adjust to a different role, and how Jaylen Brown adjusts to a different role, and how he can utilize different lineups. And, Brad Stevens was actually very, very good at getting a lot out of, I would say, undervalued or underappreciated lineups. He was a floor raiser. I don't know if that's what Joe is yet. I think we're going to find out this year if Joe is similar in that sense. But Brad Stevens was very, very good at getting a lot out of a little. And that's what the Celtics are going to need this year in order to compete at any level. If Joe can't do that, and if some of these young guys can't sort of step up into these additional minutes that they're going to be getting, Celtics won't be a playoff team, and they'll probably shut down Brown, as they should, because at that point you're playing for next season.
Yeah, and again, it's not going to be a matter of wins and losses, right? Because if they have a rough year record-wise, everyone will understand that. And as you said, John, you might even prefer that. So it's not going to be a matter of does the team win this year in terms of how they'll assess Joe's performance. It'll be, again, organizational prerogatives, continued buy-in from the key players, and I think he has that from Tatum and Brown at a pretty high level right now. I think across the board for the guys that have remained here, they like him. They enjoy playing for him. They believe in the stuff that he preaches there, but now you're doing it with a different roster. And, to go back to Brad's last press conference, John, how much did he talk about increasing pace, finding some ways to adjust their play style, the fact that it didn't work in that Knicks series, the stuff that they were doing. And now you might want to mix in some more cutting. You might want to take advantage of some ways that the league's gone in a different direction on some teams like Cleveland. So they're going to try to adapt to a new array of personnel here. We mentioned it with Gonzalez. If that's a guy whose skill set is cutting, they're going to have to cut some more. The centers that they have are probably more traditional post-up centers who don't pick and pop like Porzingis and Horford did. So you're going to have to account for that too here, and Cater's strengths and weaknesses and all the way down the line. So you just can't be burying guys who they think are part of the big picture here. You can't be overusing a guy like Brown if the health's a concern there. There's a million different things you could name out that when it comes to being on the same page for a coach in an organization, that can be as important as the wins and losses. We just saw it with Thibodeau this year, where he had the best Knicks season in 20 years, 25 years, and still got fired because he wasn't on the same page as the organization in terms of stuff that they wanted to do here. It's a new ownership group. And like I've said with the spending, John, I want to see it all here. I want to see what the action's going to be. And they'll obviously have some say into the future about how they feel about Joe's future here. And I've predicted all along that they will extend him. Maybe they can wait on that now that they do have a team option year. That's not a make or break decision this summer, but that'll say a lot, right, John? If they love him to death and have no questions about him, they'll extend him now and value the fact that they can lock him up long term. If they want to see how it goes here, then you let the contract play out and see going into next year whether you're picking up that option or not. I'm not really sure how that works. I've never heard of a team option for a coach, but if that's the case here, it gives you some more time to evaluate things and figure out what you want to do ultimately with this.
So that's
roster
what we
long term.
think. We think right now he's under contract for this year with a team option for the following.
That's what Michael Hawley reported.
And that's the multiple years. Okay. So we pulled up 1 year early. We thought the team option was this year. We thought it was this year. But so I guess, yeah, I mean, it is weird it is technically lame duck status. If the team controls your future next year, you have no, you really don't have any security. So it is interesting to let him play out this year with this team. And maybe part of it is like, again, speculation warning. If there is a mission,
hit the button.
I'm not doing it. But if there is, you know, a wink, wink secret, you know, I want you to try, you know, wink, but it's okay if you don't win and Joe doesn't play ball, you know, that's a different story. Or if he doesn't, you know, coach the way you want here. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It is,
That's
that
where
is
you
a little
need
bit
some
weird.
security as a coach, because I can understand Jimmy not wanting to go into a season and have a tank fest if you have no security as a coach.
Is there really such thing as security as a coach? I mean, yeah,
There
probably
is
some sort of money up front by signing. Is there?
Well, I think Jimmy,
What is it?
just sorry. I know there's a slight delay. If you in year 1 and 2 of a big re-sign, like let's say Joe had won 2 titles and then he comes in and you re-sign him to like 5 and like 50 or 5 and 60, you know, whatever it is, you're not going to fire him after year 1 of that because you're eating a lot of money. So like, yeah, but
the Knicks just ate a whole Tibbs extension.
Right. All indications, unless there's an absolute mutiny, but all indications.
We never find out what
he was signed pretty cheaply. He was signed pretty cheaply because of the circumstances, which is like, what are you going to say? No, you know, like, and it was year 1. So the current money, you could trade him, but an extension, he'd be paid like a real coach. And so all of a sudden, year 1 of an extension for 50 million, 60 million, 70 million, whatever you give him, you're probably not going to be out there. So there is some danger in that. You really do want to be certain.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I think that's down the list of concerns, the coach here, but it is a factor. It's a different roster. He's coached to a skill set that the previous 3 rosters had and were overloaded with when you consider the shooting and the spacing and all the other stuff you want to do on offense there. It's going to have to be a different style this year offensively for them. And again, I've been pretty complimentary of the way he's accentuated Tatum and Brown, and he's gotten a lot out of different role players. Even the development, I think we talked about it, John, last year, went in the right direction until the end. And listen, I put a lot of that playoff series on him, and I think a lot of it was rigidness. And so I did not advocate firing him for that after a championship. But this year is going to be interesting because there aren't expectations from a win and losses standpoint, but you will start to look at, all right, how flexible is he? How much is he willing to allow young guys to play through their struggles and develop here? Or is it just going to be a tight rotation of the guys he knows and likes here, and guys get boxed out, and there's some butting heads over what they're doing and where things are going here? And you know, I think another factor here is that this is going to be a challenging season, and this is some of my frustration with where the roster's at right now. Is this is Jaylen's year, right, John? And this is something I've been excited about, is the fact that he gets to lead the ship now, and he gets to show what he can do as a number one on a team. And I know Brad got asked about that today as well.
There's that
Well,
word
here you
again,
go,
Bobby.
Jaylen. You get to do it with Garza and Niang and Simons. There's no real infrastructure here for him to lead this team and exceed expectations or whatever he wants to accomplish individually. So puts him in a tough spot, puts a lot of different guys who have been here in difficult positions. And for some of them, it's opportunity and stuff they're excited about. But for Jaylen specifically, he's going to catch a lot of the scrutiny if things don't go well this year, and if his performance isn't up to par and all that. And that's tough. And that's where I think the coach has to be able to stabilize some things and get them through some tough times this year and fix some stuff. And again, I'm not going to be here sitting all season rooting for losses, John. I want to see some development. I want to see some guys surprise us. And if that leads to the team surprising us, I think that's for the best. And I think you acknowledge that as well, that if they do sit there with 43, 45 wins at the end of the year, it will be because a lot of stuff went right. And that's not a bad thing. The crashing and burning and tank years is just so speculative about everything going right in the lottery and you finding this guy that's going to change your fortunes and all that. I want to see some forward focused progress from some guys who are going to be part of this thing into the future here. And I think that's better than maybe getting the number one pick.
Wait, what do you think is more important than getting the number one pick?
Seeing some development and some forward-facing progress for guys who are going to be here as part of this roster.
Jimmy said it earlier. Jimmy said it earlier. Who are we kidding? Like, it's not like you're like, I'm not saying like,
develop.
We know we don't know how good, we don't know whether Shireman is even going to be a rotation level player. We're pretty certain he's not a star or a build around asset, but he might be a nice piece. But developing is what? Like developing a 7-8-9 rotation level player out of him. Fine. Walsh, what's the ceiling there? Possibly your 9-10 guy on a decent team. Like, what's the real ceiling? Ugo, way too early to be able to throw him into the fire and develop. He's not going to get significant minutes in year one. You're talking about playing your Garzas and your Minos and your friggin' Tillmans because they're professional basketball players with some veteran experience and living with the results. They call that the Washington Wizards. That's where we are. Like, there isn't it. It's so much easier to embrace a step back season or a tank when you've got the kids. Like, what did people want with the Red Sox this year? I don't give a crap. Start the season with Anthony and Mayer and all of these guys in there, and let's let the kids play and see what happens. It'll be fun to watch them develop, even if they're slow going out of the gate. That's what I want. I don't give a crap about wins and losses necessarily. I want to see the kids because there's guys to be excited about. There's nobody to play and develop here, Bobby. Like, that's the problem with this situation they're in. There's nothing coming up the pipeline. You got to find it, and you find it either by tanking and getting better picks or by trading a star. Other than that, you've got nothing to develop and nothing to look forward to other than to wait for Tatum to return and hope that you can shake loose some change and be able to add a decent player or two to get them back into that top 4 in the East conversation. But that's it. Like, I don't know what we're looking forward to. More Keita minutes. And I'm happy. I want to see Shireman play. I want to see what he can do. But I think we have an idea that the ceiling's not going to be super high.
Yeah, you definitely don't have any premium prospects here unless any of the younger guys surprise you. But it's progress across the board, right? Because Pritchard's probably going to start here. Does he end up becoming a high-level NBA starter at this point? Like, that's something to watch for. Simon's becoming part of their rotation potentially into the future if he can play his way into that plan. You're looking at guys off the bench taking steps like Shireman, as you mentioned, and some of the younger guys who have been here. So anything that can just contribute to success down the line, and Keita, of course, as well, because of the just complete uncertainty at center here. If any of those guys can be part of that next Tatum and Brown team that's going to be there next year after this one, that's a positive to me. And I just see the draft as so speculative. I don't think that's any more certain than some
Bobby,
of these guys
it's not
turning
certain.
into something.
we keep talking about it like certainty is what is certain? There's no certainty. Like
Right. Both
none.
directions are uncertain.
No, this is where I've been since day one, and this is where I am a tad frustrated. You are certainly stuck in, at best, the middle, unless you do something drastic, either tank or trade a star. You're certainly stuck there because there's nothing there to build around. You don't have the young players. You don't have the picks to get the players. You're hoping for a miracle, plucking somebody out of the 20s in the draft and having them be Giannis, Maxey, a legit star. You're hoping for something that is unlikely to happen based on past experience, percentages. That's number one. Number two, you do not have the financial flexibility to go add players. So you're stuck. Like for certain that you are going to have Tatum, White, Brown, and nothing much else around it other than maybe a mid-level guy you can add to the fold in 2 years. That's not going to win you a championship either. It's going to get you competitive again, but you're not going to win with that. Like, if you want to win a championship again, you have to do something drastic, or you're going to be stuck in the middle for a little bit of time. Upper middle, doesn't matter. You're not going to have the pieces. You can't get them. There's no means to get these pieces.
Right.
That's where you're stuck. Yeah.
And we're splitting hairs a little bit over the draft thing because you're going to have to draft well from the position you're in. And that might be 2 or 3 if it goes completely sideways this year. It might be 13 or 14 if you're in that play-in mix, which is where you're predicted to be right now. The difference is huge, but
huge. Yeah.
But that might be where you're at.
Difference is huge, Bobby. And by the way, you can have your little silver linings throughout a losing season. I get it. You're not going to be cheering for the Celtics to go 0-82. It would, in a perfect world, you see a few flashes from some of the young guys, but you still lose 52 games probably, right? And you end up with a top 5 pick in a draft that all the drafter experts, Kevin O'Connor, all the way down the line, say is one of the deepest drafts they've ever seen. And this guy, Kevin O'Connor, friend of the show, I've known him for a decade. I trust him more than almost anybody, if not anybody, when it comes to draft prospects. John, he was putting out his NBA draft guide as like an intern at CSN New England.
Oh my God.
That's how long.
He was the best. Yeah, exactly.
Remember that thing? He was selling it for like $10 as a PDF
Bible,
file.
a Bible.
Yeah. And now looks. And so he says it's one of the deepest, if not the deepest draft he's ever covered. So yes, there's a bit of an unknown there, but you can't tell me that a blue chip prospect, a top 5 prospect coming out of the draft this year is more of an unknown than Jordan Walsh or, and not to pick on Jordan Walsh, but I'm just giving you examples. These are second round picks that we're talking about in a lot of cases. 2 of those guys they took this year, second round picks. It's very rare for a second round pick to develop into anything more than a deep rotation player. There are exceptions to every rule. I get that. I'm not sure if we have those on the Celtics. Do I want to see Hugo get some minutes and see if he's an NBA player? Sure, I do. Not at the expense of the Celtics going, and I don't think that he would have that effect regardless, but I would much rather see them pick in the top 5 than find out, because Hugo played 6 more minutes a game, that he might be an NBA player. And I think anybody who's a Celtics fan, Brad Stevens, by the way, would tell you this too. He would tell you, you don't think anyone in the Celtics right now wants to end up in a top 5 pick next year? Of course they do.
Yeah.
They're telling you, they're basically saying, we can't do anything until Tatum comes back out of his boot and plays. They're punting next season. It's as simple as that. They're not going to say it. We will say it. They're punting next season. If I see Jaylen Brown playing in games 60-82, I'd be stunned.
Yeah. Beyond that, Jimmy, I think what we're missing here is, Bobby, do we realize, we're talking about how hard is it going to be to get things to replace Holiday, Porzingis, Luke, and Al on this team? How many even when Tatum comes back, just to get enough players to replace what you had in those guys, imperfect as they were, Holiday even aging and slightly declining last year, Porzingis not fully healthy. The amount of drafting and signing you have to do to get the that level talent back onto this team to make it championship level is extremely challenging. You're not getting
crazy.
it with pick 20. You're not getting it with pick 20 something in the mid-level exception. Like, the only way to get a massive infusion of talent is to hit rock bottom or to trade somebody. Otherwise, you are really, really, really stuck, at least for a couple of years. So that's where they're at. If they want to hold the line,
you need to hit
so
in the
be
draft.
It
Like
is.
they hit with
we've
Tatum and
talked
Brown, and like look at what the Magic have done. You know, they hit in the draft. Now they've got guys locked in for the next 5 years. It sucks that they're going to have to break that up in a few years, but that's the only way they can do it. Once you get to that third contract, you don't have any money to spend on anybody else. When even towards the end of that second contract, now by the time it happens, you've got to hit at the end of the draft. You've got to control your players for like 8 years and hope that you could piece some stars around them and some role plays around them. And then you got to strike when that window is open. And until the CBA changes, until the next, time where the Players Association and the NBA meets and figures out all the issues that they've created. That's how it is.
Guys, there are exceptions. Nikola Jokic is a second round pick.
Of
You
course.
know there are exceptions. You have to
What are the
get
odds,
lucky.
though?
You got to get lucky, and if you can, that's the bailout. If they'd gotten lucky earlier, if they drafted Desmond Bane, you'd have an all-star, another all-star here. You probably don't have to make the holiday trade. You don't have to. You don't put yourself in cap jail because you would have had guys already. If you hung on to Neesmith, you missed. You missed on too many draft picks.
That's today. The Brogdon thing started all of this. Trading Neesmith for Brogdon and some of those pieces into a more expensive guy, and
then they kept going, and then they got more expensive and more expensive. They went up. There's no way to get there without doing something big. So again, right now, we're not going to put anything into this year's team, but we're not going to sell it all yet. There might still be a time where they decide, in order to move forward, we're going to have to take another step back, or we're going to have to do something else. So we'll see how this year plays out. Last thing we want to talk about, I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but we've been texting about it and this and that. This idea of kind of found, gold here with, finding somebody like a Lillard or even Bradley Beal here who could be free and available. And all of a sudden you're getting an all-star caliber player for next to nothing. We've kind of debated the merits of doing something like this, just texting back and forth. Where do you guys stand on Lillard and or Beal as potential options for the Celtics? I mean, we have to understand, I want to preface this by saying, why in the F would these guys want to sign to this sinking ship right now? Makes no sense. But if they did want to, what are the benefits?
Beal knows
and
is
what are the
sinking
drawbacks? Yeah.
Bobby, you start.
He might want to get somewhere, and I've seen that the Clippers are probably his destination if he's bought out. So I don't want Beal. I don't think that does anything for you. The Lillard thing's interesting to me just because
Beal low key might be better than Lillard at this point in his career. He actually had a much better season than everybody's giving him credit for last year in terms of his efficiency. It was just a poorly constructed roster around the stars. But anyway.
He couldn't get on the court a ton. That was the issue. And that's obviously going to be the question with Lillard now, too, is where's he at health-wise for the rest of his career? Because he not only tore his Achilles, but also went through the blood clot issue that preceded that and threatened his season. And, those things are always scary for your career at a certain point and certainly your life. So there's a lot of questions here around where's he going to be at when he gets back. But when he does get back, he'd be playing alongside Tatum, Brown, hopefully a better core. So this is obviously something we're talking about for the following year. And you've mentioned it, John. Why would he sign now? There isn't a lot of benefit to doing it now for him. The money offsets, so anything up to $22 million, which is what the Bucks are going to pay if in the first of 5 years here, will offset. And obviously the Celtics aren't going to be paying that. So if he joined, it'd be on a minimum, and that would be great for the Celtics. Maybe it's 2 years at the minimum, and he plays that next year, or there's an option on the third or something like that. I think that would be ideal for Boston, but I just don't get it from Lillard's standpoint to sit through this year and be in Boston unless he just loves Tatum that much that he wants to rehab with him. And his family's in Portland. And I think he was separated from them in Milwaukee last year, and that was a difficult thing for him. So I think he'll probably want to be in close proximity to them. That's where the Warriors thing comes into play, and I think that makes some sense too. Probably about as much sense as the Celtics do for him at this point, and he's from Oakland, so I'd put it like 50-50 Celtics Warriors, and I do like it just because if it's a minimum, John, or even if you do have to pay him like the mid-level next year or something a little bit more than that, because his salary again offsets next year as well from the Bucks. It's this season and the next they'll offset. What's the harm? I don't see any harm in it. That he would help your backcourt. He's a great fit in your system with all the threes you want to shoot. He would maybe even bring some players in, having Lillard, Tatum, and Brown, those guys there. I don't think there's any downside to it at the minimum.
Yeah, so I don't hate it for a couple reasons. One, I don't hate it because it doesn't help you this year. And so my thing is, it's still going to allow the Celtics to go through this year and hopefully end up with a good draft pick. And then if the goal is to, really kickstart this turnaround, and if you think that Tatum is going to be ready, you now have a veteran point guard in Lillard that can, jump in. Now, obviously the question is, how healthy is he going to be coming back? You get two guys coming back from Achilles injuries. Are they both going to be at 75%? And therefore it's neither one really good enough? I'm not sure, but it allows Derek White to be Derek White at the 2 spot. I think it fits everybody back into where they would normally be. Now, Lillard defensively would still be a bit of a liability, especially coming off an Achilles. So that would be a bit of an issue. I don't hate it. If it's short money, I don't hate it. That's kind of my take on that. I don't really want Beal. I understand that Beal probably had a better year, but I don't see the fit here. It doesn't make sense for him at all to come to Boston and waste a year. Lillard wouldn't be wasting a year. He's not going to play
Tatum
next year
boys.
anyway. And he doesn't even, I still don't think Tatum's not playing. So I just don't think that it's going to happen. With Lillard, Bobby, if the Celtics did want Lillard, they'd have to probably make some concessions with him. Like, you can rehab out in Portland. Just come check in with us on this many occasions. Join us on a road trip here and there. They're not going to make the guy, live in a hotel all winter in Boston when he's not playing. I don't see that happening.
Yep.
He doesn't need to be on the team, around the team all that time. Now, they're going to probably want him to do some sort of, plan they're going to put together, of course. And they want to be a part of his rehab and check in and things. But are they going to make him live in freaking Waltham? No, they're not going to make him do that. So
let's say it's 3 years at the minimum, John. Third year
on
player
Lillard.
option, so let's say it's a third year player.
Which is
I'll tell you
Pritchard to
my
the bench.
I'll tell you my stance. At first, I was a hard no, and the main reason being because I've softened it a little, but the main reason being what I keep saying earlier is the Celtics need to detonate, and go backwards hard. Lillard doesn't hurt the tank next year, so I do think that is a better reason to potentially do it. In a perfect world, you would end up in the lottery, and then you come back with a very high draft pick that you can insert into a lineup, plus Lillard, Tatum, Brown, and all of a sudden, as Jimmy said, you realign, you reset, you bump Pritchard back to a 6-man role, you bump Hauser back to the bench. Is it a perfect lineup? No. You get out under the luxury tax there. You can use that mid-level. You can go get yourself a serviceable big man or a person or two, and now fill out a more competent lineup that doesn't have Hauser and Kata starting with Walsh and Shireman as your 2 options off the bench. And I can't believe 50% of you think that 43 wins is going to happen next year, because we did put up a poll, but it doesn't matter. So could you talk yourself into that? Maybe. However, I am very hard on my stance that, and this is not an anti-Brown or Tatum agenda, I do not believe you can build a team right now, or I don't believe the Celtics are in a position to build a team around 2 max superstars, given how little they have in reserve. And so,
but now you have a star on the minimum.
So that changes it a little, but I do think you're pressing pause on, and also maybe conning yourself into believing, well, but what if maybe we can pull this off,
here's the thing.
And try to have one of those old school superstar teams from 10 years ago, where it's 3 stars and a bunch of, and then 8 Udonis Haslams, and that's good enough to win. I don't think you can do that anymore. I think the model has been proven clear here. A lot has changed. We see the value of depth. We see the pace and space and the way that the NBA is being played here. I just don't know that you can trot out that type of team that the Celtics would be putting out there and consider them a serious contender. I think you're in Clippers land, some enticing things. Sometimes it looks really good, but just not enough,
So here's the thing I want to stress. You're going to have one more year of this Thunder super team, and I do think they'll be prohibitive favorites next year and a level above everybody else. And again, we said that about the Celtics last year going into it and didn't quite work out that way. But once they have to start offloading some stuff, the Magic are a team. They're a little built up and expensive now. They're going for it, and they'll have to offload in the near future. There's a couple teams that are probably going to look like they're in more Knicks, Cavs. These teams are in the dominant positions right now, but they're not going to be there for long. So if we're looking beyond this year to the next one,
right?
What is Lillard, Brown, Tatum? Competent center, like you said, John, and Pritchard and Hauser off the bench. I know that doesn't look like a super team by the standards we've looked at in past years, but in an NBA where the talent's spread out more evenly, Tatum, Brown, Lillard, a decent center, and some other pieces there might be pretty good.
I mean, is Damian Lillard coming off of an Achilles at age 36, and is post-injury Lillard any better than Anthony Simons? I might even say he's worse. Like,
what are we
talking about
That's
here?
The question. It's like we don't
the
caught
real,
up in the name, and you forget.
You're caught up in the name.
On the back.
The real benefit here is you're gambling.
And you're bringing in a guy who needs 20 shots a game. This idea that he's going to come in and a bench roll up. So it's fine.
Well, that's the other thing.
Potentially disruptive, and also, like I said, pressing pause on giving you false hope and keeping you from doing the thing you might need to do in order to maximize whichever star you decide you want to ride out, Tatum or Brown's window, and not move on. You're talking about not only Lillard off an Achilles, you're talking about Tatum off an Achilles. You're talking about Jaylen Brown in year 11 in the league, and Derek White is 32 years old. This is not like, it sounds good. It's not as good as it sounds. It's not.
Might be the best they can do. But
that's the point is, again,
it might not be saying, so why do it?
Embrace the pain rather than play out the rest of Tatum's prime and Tatum and Brown's prime, futzing around, hoping that this team of injured aging superstars can keep you in the mix, and then be left with nothing. No trade value for those guys anymore, and an impossible task of rebuilding after having been stuck kind of in the 4 or 5 seed range and getting pick number 22 every single year.
Well, the one thing
I don't like it. I would rather go backwards and try to go forwards with newer, younger players. You need a reload. I think Lillard just kind of presses pause. That's all.
And we disagreed about this for a while. I think the North Star for them has got to be trying to retain Tatum long term, right? That's the guy that they're going to build around for the bulk of his career, if not all of it. And I think the most surefire way to keep him around and invested is to continue to try to put together as competitive of a team as you can each and every year. And this might be the one when he comes back that looks like it can contend at that point. And if that doesn't work, you keep trying to pivot at that point.
Let's get young and athletic. Let's stop doing this old guy thing. Like, I'm tired of it. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be the old slow team.
You might be able to do a little bit of both. The thing is, you need some reliable talent here. And this, to me, there's obviously a risk with his health and where he's at in his career, but the cheat code is the cap hit you're taking on him. You're having the Bucks pay.
I get the low risk.
There's almost no risk other than the fit and maybe not working personality wise.
And the false hope.
But again, I keep going back to the youth movement and the draft picks and all that. That stuff's uncertain too. And if you're doing that or trading Brown like we've discussed and bringing in some young guys who are uncertain and all that, like it just accelerates the possibility that you could lose Tatum down the line.
Bobby, how did they get here? This is so baffling to me. How are the Celtics now? Because of Tatum and Brown. Like, you got there, you got the picks, you made the picks, and then you have this duo that everybody's been gushing over for 10 years. Like, how is any team good right now? They drafted good guys, and then they grew with them. That's how every team is good. Or you trade a superstar for younger guys like Oklahoma City did, and you get your SGA, and you get your Chet. Every team is doing it. I don't understand. Like, I'm not mad. I'm so confused. Like, that's how you succeed. You get the young guys. especially now before you have to pay them that super max whatever in their by the time they hit their rookie
Contract,
extension,
yeah.
you can surround them with people with talent. It's really hard to have superstars in your 30s making super max deals and put quality players around them, especially guys that have question marks with injuries around them. I don't get of course it's uncertain, but that's how everybody gets good, or teams get stuck in nowhere land, continuing to pick in the lottery and swinging and missing all the time. If you trust Brad or you trust the people making the decisions, you get there, you make the picks, you get the players, you develop them. That's what you're supposed to do, and that's how they got here. They did it. They got Tatum, Brown, and Smart, and had a core, a solid core for 7-8 years. And then they had the flexibility to add some pieces around it. That's what they did.
Right. And you got to get those right. And they did, under the previous front office there. This one hasn't been in that position. And we've seen the ways the top picks have gone wrong too. So I'm just always wary of the top picks solving problems. And I know, again, it's part of the picture now, and it's almost a given for them that they're going to have to hit on some picks here to make this thing work, just because of the kind of cap position that they're in right now. But to get to the premium top level spot where it's more of a certainty, it is just going to be so difficult to me, and it's going to be really painful. And listen, you could manufacture it somehow, and like Jimmy said, Brown's playing less at the end of the year, and maybe you trade a Hauser or something like that, and you just find
Trade
these little
Simons at
ways
the deadline.
Yeah, to work your way up that board. And like you've said, John, you're an injury or two away from that just happening regardless. So it definitely could happen this year. I just hesitate having that be the plan. I think there's various ways that you can get back to contention status, especially when you have the two core players that you're going to build around here. I'm not saying that they should be the 6th seed this year necessarily, but I do think that you try to figure out what you have here, try to compete as best you can. And if it's not looking right, then you can start to pull the plug on some stuff mid-season there. But
I think
it scares me.
Here's another
You're going to
problem.
get both, Bobby. You're going to find out what you have, and you're also going to lose a ton of games by finding out what you have. So you might get what you want, and John might get what he wants.
Also, here's what nobody wants. You enter the season, you didn't make a trade, you didn't take the big swing, you're kind of holding your breath that everything is going to work out. Jaylen Brown goes out there and suffers another injury setback with that knee, and all of a sudden you're starting to trend in a Rob Williams, Kemba Walker situation. That's a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
That's done. That's Bradley. You've got a dead money on. I'm not saying that's a doomer perspective, but there is risk there. But that as much risk as there is with drafting the wrong guy, there's risk on holding on to. There's risk on holding on to assets too long, or Derek White starts to show some sign of decline, or in a role as the number 2 guy, Derek White isn't as good as he was as the number 4 guy on a team, or Jaylen Brown as the alpha proves to be a mess and is averaging 5 or 6 turnovers a game. And all of a sudden people are like, I'm not trading for this guy to be my star. All of these things are possible as well. In the same vein, Jaylen Brown might come out there and friggin' finish top 3 in MVP voting, up his game completely, finish averaging 38 and 6. And we're like, holy shit. And now you've got a different conversation. All of this is possible, but there is certainly risk involved with waiting. You wait, Brown isn't as good as you'd hoped, or some of the other pieces. Now you can't trade them, or there's an injury. Tatum comes back. He's not himself. You're dead. You're dead for 10 years. Like, there is significant risk in waiting, much more so than what if I pick the wrong guy number 3 overall? There's a lot of risk in either scenario. It's just, do you have the stomach?
If you pick the wrong guy 3 overall, depending on what you do elsewhere, maybe you do still have Tatum and Brown at that point, then you're in the same position, or you're in a worse one if you move off of Brown and don't get the right return and all that. So I understand the patience, because I don't think
you want to get rid of
rush.
it. You want to be, there is though, you got to, if you're late, you're dead. There's a huge,
but you got to get it
risk.
Right if you're going to do it.
If you're early, you might be a tad early and you might pick wrong, but that's how it works. You don't always pick the right guy in the draft. It's an inexact science. If it was automatic, every team picking first would win the championship in a couple of years. It doesn't work that way. That's understood. There is a massive risk by waiting too long. Yeah.
you can't get bailed out the way the Celtics did when they traded Pierce and Garnett back in the day, because
That's how
teams
you
can't
ended up
absorb.
with Brown and Tatum. Yeah.
Exactly, but and you can't. The Celtics will not get bailed out that way moving forward, because the CBA doesn't allow. And first of all, they don't have players like that. But you don't want to get to that point is where you just have an aging team, and you know you're not good enough to win, and you didn't reset soon enough, and you got this absolute bailout by the Nets that saved the organization. That's not coming this time around. So to John's point, you do have to kind of see
Maybe
a
with
little bit of the
Brown.
future ahead, and make difficult decisions. The Celtics have made many difficult decisions over the last 20 years, and they've been necessary decisions at the time. And so far, this team hasn't had to make. They've made some difficult decisions, but their hands were forced. And some people say it might be too late in that sense too.
And I've said this a bunch of times on this show, John, because, in all the time I've covered Brad as president, I've said a ton that his major goal is to keep Brown, Tatum together, figure out everything else around them, and just have that be the floor of their competitiveness, is having those two guys and their abilities and what they do collectively there. And obviously Tatum injury could have changed that. Cap situation could have changed that. But, Gary asked him today, building around those two guys, how are you going to do it? Like, what's going to be the way you continue to try to put a good roster around those two guys? And he pretty much said as much, that, again, we're going to try to maximize these two guys. And we can go back and forth about how seriously they looked at moving Brown and whether that was actually a possibility this offseason. I know Zarin shot it down and all that. It's something that they have to keep in their back pocket. I'm not going to sit here and say they can never trade Brown. That's ridiculous. That isn't going to work. But it might get to a point where that has to be their out. And like you said, circumstances could change with him where you aren't able to get as big of a return than what you would have potentially been able to this summer. But I think he reaffirmed again today that they want to make this thing work with Brown and Tatum, because if you look around the league, how many teams have a core two guys who are on that level? And we'll see what they're coming back from the injuries and all that, but it is still an advantage. Maybe the only advantage that they have against the field is that they have two supermax guys at their best locked up through 2029 or whatever it is. So there's not a high urgency with those guys yet. That could change here. But I think that's the one thing you're leaning on, is that you have those two as the core two. White's a pretty good third option. Pritchard and Hauser on two amazing contracts. And you have a lot to figure out beyond that. But it's an okay starting point. Again, in this field, in this CBA, and the way things are about to change here, and the way we've already seen it change for a lot of teams, no one's going to be in a perfect position. The Thunder are going to try to cling on to it, but we'll see how that even works with some tough decisions they might have to make after this upcoming season here. But no one's going to be in a perfect position. So even though it looks a little uncertain for the Celtics right now, they're not in a much worse position than anyone else.
The Celtics are in a much worse position.
Again,
the Celtics are in a much worse position if
we were stacking up teams you would want to be right now. Where would they rank?
That's not it. You want to be the best team or nothing. That's the point. Like, you're not. The Celtics are
Look at
not
Utah.
The Celtics are not in a position to be a championship level team unless a lot of things happen for them that seem unrealistic. We're really talking about, not can the Celtics finish as the 3 or the 4 seed with a core of Tatum and Brown and whatever they can put around it. They can. Are the Celtics a legitimate title contender without being able to add impact rookies or trade for another impact player or sign impact free agents? And the answer is probably not. That's all I'm at there. They can absolutely be good again. Can they be great again?
How do they get there?
I don't.
But isn't Denver asking that question with Jokic? And there's a bunch of teams with stars and some of the best stars in the league who are asking themselves, are we in position to win a championship?
Sometimes holding the line is better than blowing it up entirely. There's no question about that. But sometimes teams are doing that with the, I'm going to take half a step back and then come forward. It's just, if you've literally got nothing coming up behind them, if the Celtics had anything coming up the pipeline right now, you would feel differently. The fact that they don't is why they're in this weird position. There's no ascending talent. There's no premium draft picks. They simply cannot get better. All they can do is add our best player in a boot. That's the only thing that they can do, at least for 2 years. And then you can talk about some money coming free in 27. But everyone's like, oh,
And
it's
you
just
still
1
have
year.
to get lucky.
It's 1 year of pain and 2 years of this is as good as it gets. And then you can start to look at it. And as Jimmy said, then you still have to get lucky, but you're 2 years further along in everybody's career, and a lot can change there. So
Right.
there's no quick path to it. That's the problem.
Right.
There's no quick path.
And that's why they've moved off the old guys. And Horford's out the door now, and Porzingis, who's entering his 30s. White's on the edge, and we'll see where that goes over the next couple of years here. But Brown's going to be 29. Tatum's going to be 28. There's still at least for the rest of their contract window there to figure things out around them. So it's sort of like that in between period the Patriots had, where you're restocking and you're trying to figure out what the next core is going to be there. And there's a couple of years where it doesn't look great, like 09 and
I got
10.
news for you. They finished in the bottom of the league 2 years in a row. And if you look at almost every portion of that Patriots, rebuild,
No, they made
where
the playoffs
there.
those 2 years.
Oh, sure. I'm talking about what they've done in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Like, you're restocking the cabinet, with stars here, but NFL's totally different because you can
It's
reset
different.
there a lot faster. You can.
The NFL.
Yeah.
This is really hard. Getting players as
A
good
lot
as
of
Tatum
this-
and Brown
we
are
know.
really
A lot of this,
hard.
honestly,
It's really
John,
hard.
and it's so tough. Sorry, Jimmy, real quick. It's really tough because they're both hurt right now. If those two guys were fully healthy and fully loaded and ready to go, you're like, all right, those two guys are great. We'll figure this out around them. Tatum having an Achilles and Brown a meniscus, that's where it gets really scary, because that's the stuff that could reroute your thought that they're still ascending into their primes here. But if it's about who are your stars and what are those guys capable of, that's still going to come down to how good is Tatum against the other guys, the other great players in the league. How good is Brown against some of the other best second options in the league? And then you're just trying to figure everything out after that. And for a lot of teams in the league, especially the bottom feeders who are going to be competing for that top pick with you, John, they don't have anything. I mean, the Jazz just sold their whole team because they're just going to tank this year. The Nets have nothing on their roster because they're going to tank this year. The teams that are going for the top pick clear out their rosters entirely. They don't have a Brown, a Tatum. They don't even have a Pritchard or a Hauser.
But again, that's those teams. Like right now,
there's
again,
4 or 5 of those teams.
It's not as many as you think. You can even go through to Charlotte. Ball, Miller, Bridges. It's not awful. You know what I mean? Is they're not great, but there's some.
They predicted 20 wins less than you.
They shouldn't be. There's not zero talent there. The Celtics, first of all, Vegas predictions are based on the stupidity of the bettors, not what the people actually think is going to happen. Because the Celtics have the name the Celtics, they believe that they can set that thing a little bit higher. Yeah. And so that's definitely part of it. If people asked you with truth serum, what do you think the Celtics are going to do? I think a lot of people would bet lower than that. But because they're the Celtics, they're not going to set it that low because people are going to be overconfident in it. And it seems like a low juicy thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, there's only probably 3-4 teams that have. Again, Bobby, Keita is starting. I don't think we realize how low the talent level that they're going to be putting out there is, even with Brown and White, where they're going to be playing some crap players significant minutes last year. It has the possibility to be 20 win bad, and it has the possibility to be 45 win good. But the range is pretty friggin'
20
wide.
win bad guys are hurting out.
This is a bad team. It's a bad
20?
Team. Bobby, 5, your best player.
20's bad, John. 20 is bad.
25, 30. That's a 30 win team. 30 is in play.
The Hornets had 20 last year. They had 19. The Sixers had 24.
But Bobby, you're top heavy.
Those numbers are in play. Those numbers are in play.
You have 2 guys, Bobby, and one of them is coming off an injury. That's just the reality of it right now. So yeah,
for sure.
20 sounds low, and I would hope
30 is in play. 30 is legit in play.
30 sounds a little more reasonable.
I mean, there are teams, and the East isn't deep, and that's the only reason why 30 is in play, because there's a lot of crappy teams in the East. But there are a lot of teams that just depth-wise, even they can rely on the bench a little bit more. They can rely on 5, 6, 7, in the rotation. I don't know if this Celtics team you really can do that right now. We're talking about players that weren't even really considered last year, and now they're going to have much,
especially if they
roles.
trade. If they trade Simons and Yang also, who are Simons is a solid NBA player, and Yang is a serviceable one. If they trade those guys for nothing just to shed more salary, they are in pain next year. This is wait for the next Brad Presser when those guys are gone. Holy shit.
I mean, yeah, and that's where, like we've said, if it's a tax mandate here, and they pointed against that today, then it's tank time. For sure.
I have no idea what they want to do with Simons. No idea what they want to do with Simons. I don't really.
They want to trade him, but can't.
Right. I think that's ultimately what it is. I can't believe that he's a guy they feel like, oh, we're gonna acquire this guy and sign him to a 4-year extension and pay him $40 million a year. Like, I just don't see.
Can I pull up Brad's quote today on those guys?
Go ahead. I know. I thought that like Simons would have been and I said this to you, John. If they can't trade him now, he might be a really good trade deadline guy for a team looking to get a little bit of an offensive boost. And maybe you can get something of value for him for a team looking to go over the edge, or maybe a team that just lost a player. Maybe, with the injuries happening the way they are, so Celtics could hold on to Simons and wait for an opportune time to trade him to a team that maybe just lost a guy that was giving them 18, 20 points a game. I think Simons.
This was the statement. Because again, they didn't talk about either of these guys forever because the deal took weeks to go final. So they finally announced it yesterday. And this is the state. I know you talked more about them today, but this was Brad's statement on those two guys coming in. Anthony's a really good young player who has continuously improved in his 7 years in the NBA. And then for Niang, George is no stranger to Boston and has continuously been a winning player over the course of his career. We're excited to add both of them to the team. They're not exactly gushing over these guys.
No. I think Brad did say,
I will say, John,
it was tough losing Drew and Porzingis, but we like the guys we got back. Like, it was like, do you?
I'd have to imagine they're going to introduce the owner at some point. I think they're going to do the Board of Governors meeting in Vegas here sometime this month and approve the sale. So when they finally introduce Bill, if they're going to do it here, does he want to do a presser with George, Niang, and Simon, the Chris Humphries thing, John, that we talked about? Or does he want Damian Lillard next to him when he gets introduced for the first time as owner? I think that's a little more enticing.
Look, man, I don't know. Anything can happen. What I will say, going back to it, and we'll put a bow on this here, but the Lillard thing, I don't love it. But for the reasons I stated, but I'm absolutely for it because it would be a fun story and an interesting subplot. And right now, there's nothing interesting about this team other than hoping that they finish bottom 3 and land a monster draft pick, because this is just a slog of a year. By the way, watch the Garden Report after every single game this year. It's going to be great.
How was that Mayo year for the Pats?
Look, everyone, the Mayo year was hard. The Mayo year was horrible because you already had your quarterback, and you were tanking for the ability to trade your first pick. That was about it. At least there was May playing after we got through that, but that wasn't the Mayo year. It was the year before that was the painful year. They were both bad. But Mayo was bad because of incompetence.
Both years were bad, but the expectations were different.
Yeah, the year before that was bad because it was like, I can't believe how bad this team is. Like, every player is bad. That's how bad it was.
You just kind of rallied around the offense. You would
tanking years are
game.
Awful. I was a fan at the time for that.
You would jump on the show and rage.
So the Celtics had one tank year, and again, back to the Tatum Brown conversation. They got Brown and Tatum because of the Nets trade and the Nets falling apart. That tank year, the first one with Brad, and I think he alluded to it today, it was guys going in and out of the door. Jameer Nelson was playing. Phil Pressey was in the next night. you were rooting for them to lose because you knew the lottery was the big picture there, but you're also like, can we see a little something here that makes us feel good to actually enjoy watching or maybe be a piece here long term? And there was just nothing. They just kept losing. Eventually it got to a point. They had that Jeff Green win early, the shot everyone always replays, and they got off to like a decent start through the first 10, 15 games. But then when like January or February hit, it was just put anyone out there who will lose this game. I think they lost a ton of games in a row at one point. That's a tank year. I mean, guys, you got your Jeff Green and Rondo sitting on the bench maybe, and then it's Gerald Wallace and Chris Humphries tanking away. This team still has Brown, Hauser, Pritchard. I still think you're right, John. This might be a less talented team given that Tatum's out than 2021, but it's still way more talented than 2014. And what did that team finish ultimately? Let's see. They were like 30 something, 25. I mean, that team won 25, John, and they sacked guys left and right. And it was Keith Bogans and Marshawn Brooks and Jordan Crawford and Favaroni. So it's going to take a lot for them to get into the 20s or lower.
20s is hard. 30s is in play. A bottom 10 finish is in play. There's no question about that.
I have them 18th to 21 right now in the league. So bottom 10 is in play.
Bottom 10 is in play. Anyway,
they're injury away from that drastic.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. If guys go down.
Yeah. We have lumbered on long enough talking about this, but Brad Stevens did talk about the future of the Boston Celtics, which right now isn't super bright. But again, anything could happen. Nothing's going to change much. Brad did mention that maybe a thing or two happens here, but I wouldn't expect fireworks. Be interesting if the Lillard thing came to fruition. I think if something does happen, it will be more likely that it'll be a trade of Simons and or Nyang, which is not something that will make the team better. In fact, it will very likely make them worse. However, there is hope still ahead, and that, of course, is Vegas Summer League. Even though it doesn't matter, almost nothing that comes out of Vegas matters. You do get a chance to see actual basketball players play basketball. So the Celtics drafted a couple of players. They're going to be there in Vegas. So is Bobby Bucket Hat. He's going to be there Friday, July 11th in Vegas. We will do a show after that game. Yes, we freaking will. And we will talk about what we saw there. Bobby's there. Noah's there. We will have full Summer League coverage throughout the Vegas stay. So make sure you join the Garden Report there. I'm sure we'll have more stuff cooking throughout the week as well. And Bobby's bringing in different guests and different people talking about different things as it pertains to the Boston Celtics. So you don't want to miss out. You want to follow us on all of our social media.
Eastern. On Friday,
4
o'clock.
Follow us on all our social media platforms here, all of us on Twitter. Subscribe, like, all of that stuff, the YouTube channel. And again, support our sponsors. It means a lot to us. If you're interested in daily fantasy sports, Prize Picks is the place for you. Download that app today. Pick more or less on 2 or more players for a chance to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Use that promo code CLNS when you download the app. Play 5, get 50 instantly in your account. You don't have to win. You just play 5, you get 50. Prize Picks run your game. Once again, thanks to Bobby Manning, thanks to Jimmy Toscano, and a special shout out to John Dalzell, who's celebrating, I don't know what number birthday, but that's why Noah couldn't make it today.
Oh, shout
out having
Happy birthday.
A birthday bash with dear old dad, who does watch the show, which makes me cringe, but that's okay.
He's judging everything you say.
Judging everything. That's okay.
Yeah. Man, he can play. I played against him basketball a month ago or so, and it was
he's glad he got your approval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
He can play.
He still got it?
I mean, he hit like 8 threes, and I was closing out full speed. It was insane.
Yeah. Try the cornet contest next time. just jump from wherever you are. Maybe that'll work. Anyway, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Thanks everybody in the chat for keeping it civil and fun and engaging with all of your discussion and your involvement. We will see you guys next time.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're gonna do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way. Let's fight out over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke an hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke